All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this week for our weekly webinar, and this is a good one. We are going to be having Greg Sunbeck talk to you all about our TACFI STRATFI program. I see a bunch of folks now streaming in. We're already over 60 plus. I'll just let it go for a little while longer, and then we'll kick right in. I also want to let everyone know as they're filing in, we do have a survey for you here, just to put in any ideas you guys have for us on topics that you want covered. I know that we're trying to make this this program as beneficial to you all as possible. So if there's some topics that you feel we haven't covered enough, please let us know. And as we build out for October, November, we're going to try to incorporate some of those ideas in. So again, be looking for that. And that's a way for you guys to participate. Looks like we're definitely over 120 plus now. So I think we can get started. My name is Jimmy Colerain. I'm the engagements lead here for AFVentures, and really excited to have Greg Sunbeck talk to you all today. He's going to be bringing up all the different aspects of the TACFI STRATFI program, and just a quick bit of admin for you all from last week's great discussion on defense-focused topics versus open topic. There's actually been a change now, and the defense-focused topic is now going to be referred to as the specific topic. So I think there was some confusion, and rightfully so, from folks saying, hey, defense-focused topic sounds a lot like the focus areas. So I think to take out some of that confusion, the defense-focused topic will now be called the specific topic as opposed to our open topic. So good change, I think, just that it'll help take away some of that confusion. With that said, now I'd like to kick it over to Greg. Greg, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here, and just make sure I'll do a quick comm check. Yes, I'm here, and just make sure I'll do a quick comm. All right, so I'm going to take that as everybody can hear me okay. All right, so first off, appreciate everybody jumping on here. This is going to be focused on the supplemental funding program, and also more colloquially known as the STRATFI and TACFI program. So let's, before we jump into that, I'd ask that all questions and answers please be posted into the Q&A. At the end, the way we'll process questions is with a raised hand, and we'll be able to call on you so that you can get unmuted, come on live and ask your question, and then we'll be able to answer it that way. However, if you feel more comfortable just posting it in the chat, we have a whole team of folks that are going to be starting to tackle those, and may bring some of them to our attention so that you can come online and ask it live, because it has broad applicability to multiple users. So with all of that, let's jump on in. Next slide, please. All right, so here's the items that we're going to cover today. So because we've already shifted out of the ability to accept packages for FY21, the way that this particular one will be focused is a little bit of the historical. So what happened in 20, the results for 20, some of the results for 21, what the structure looked like, things along those lines. And then we'll also get into a little bit of what to expect for FY22. Next. So as we've already articulated, and this is the same for this is exactly from the 21 program. The intent of this program, of the STRATFI and TACFI program, is to be able to catalyze that relationship between the Air Force and Space Force end users and the acquisition professionals, while leveraging and bringing in the private sector innovators and investors, with the ultimate goal of being able to bridge the capability gaps that we typically see from what happens during your phase 2s to the beyond efforts, the phase 3 type of production like contracts, so that you can scale and be successful inside of the Air Force or the Department of the Air Force. Next. So this is some of the figures from FY20. So we had 18 STRATFIs that were awarded. So they received $101 million in SBIR funding, $102 million in matched government, and they brought in $342 in private funds. These were 4-year period performances on at the max. There were some that were a little bit less, depending on what their period of performance was, which resulted in 31 different customer or government organizations participating, as with 67 additional sources of private capital coming in. So the averages, as you can see on the bottom, were 5.6 for government and SBIR funds, and then $19 million of private investment brought in. Next, please. So when we rolled into the FY20, we had certain criteria that made you eligible to participate in the program. First and foremost, you must have had a Department of the Air Force Phase 2, either active or have been completed within the last 3 years. If it was active, you have to have had at least 90 days of performance completed before you could submit that capability package. Beyond that, you also could not have had a sequential Phase 2 in order to participate in this program, and you are not currently executing a STRATFI. And then the bottom two are what we'll dive into a little bit later as well, about the matching ratios that you would need to be able to bring to the table in order to participate, as well as the ability to achieve and obtain the end user and customer support necessary in order for you to continue forward with your package. Next, please. So for funding, this is the offerings that TACFI and STRATFI had in 21, and it is $375 to $1.7 million of funding, and these are representative of the SBIR or STTR investment that we are able to make for each of these programs. And then STRATFI just has bigger dollar values associated with it, but it also had more requirements associated with the capabilities and the signatories and support necessary. So this one is $3 million up to $15 million of SBIR funds. Next, please. And so when we talk about these min maxes of SBIR investment, they have an associated ratio depending on which program you're going into. So for TACFI and STRATFI, we had a defense only track and a dual use track. With the defense only track for TACFI, it was a 1-to-1 ratio. So 1 part SBIR investment, 1 part for government investment. And then dual use, and you can see the ratios associated with all these programs. Only other one I'll touch on is the STRATFI dual use. This is the only one where we were able to accept government and private investment in order to facilitate these large dollar value contracts and help to move these technologies forward. All the other ones you need to pick a government or private investment in order to bring to the table in order to hit these matching ratios. Next, please. The structure of this program took the shape of a notice of opportunity that went out to all eligible companies. A capability package was required of you to be submitted to us, and that consisted of a couple different parts. So you had your end user memorandum, which represents the people that are going to be utilizing the technology day to day to help shape and craft that the development of the technology. A customer memorandum, which generally represents the people that do some of the acquisition, the sustainment type of activities. We would also be looking for the contracting and FM support to come from these individuals in this entity. It doesn't necessarily, for TACFI, it didn't necessarily have to be a program office or that type of organization. It could have been something similar. So an end user, a customer, if you're bringing in private investment, private funding letters, and then a matching funds form to let us know where all the sources of funds were coming from, who was providing those, and in what quantities. Next, please. So here's some lessons learned from the FY21 program. I'm not going to read through all these, but the big ones that I want to really hammer on is one of the bottom ones there. So the listed POCs are not aware that they were listed on the MOUs. This has caused significant delays in the ability to process these packages and the ability for companies to move forward inside of the process. So when we say, here are all the people that need to be identified in the MOU, contact needs to be made with those individuals so that they know that they are being signed up to do work in order to execute these contracts. In a lot of cases, we've reached out and they have no idea that the company's trying to do something. There's support. There's no back and forth there. And so we spend a lot of time trying to educate and bring them up to speed, which totally derails the method that we want to be able to implement in order to effectively get through these packages and make decisions and get money out the door so that contracts can be issued. And that's essentially the same bullet point as a couple up from that, the missing staff function coordination. We need to be able to get that done and hammer that home so that we can effectively execute this program. Otherwise, we will be delayed significantly, which we've already seen to date. I won't touch on any of the other ones, but in general, making sure that you are complying with what is being asked for in the notice of opportunity and all the memorandums are going to be key for you to be successful when you submit these packages to us. Otherwise, there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot more digging that needs to happen, and ultimately, it just takes longer to get things done. All right, next, please. So for this year's program, this is a snapshot of everything that was requested of us. So we received 161 capability packages, and this is the summation of the funding that was requested of us. This is not representative of what we are going to fund or what our budget is or anything else. But as you can see, even from compared to the earlier numbers, we've had a very significant uptick in the interest and people playing in this program. So of the SBIR funds that were asked of us, and this is between STRATFI and TACFI, it was $421+ million, right? And so you can see how this flows out into the other components, whether it is Air Force or government funds in general, as well as the private investment that is being leveraged in order to compete and play in this program. Next, please. So what is next? We will be sending out a notice of opportunity towards the end of this calendar year. So the intent is that we are taking this time right now in order to get feedback, to revamp the program, and then to push out the new program to the community, government, and to companies. So that you can expect that to happen towards the end of the calendar year, which means that the open window where capability package will be accepted by us will begin in the beginning of calendar year 22. We don't have set dates. We don't have anything firm or official. So we want to be able to just kind of put that into your mind as you're thinking about what your strategy looks like moving from phase 2s. If you want to apply for this program, starting to talk about how do we get people lined up, things like that. We will be hosting numerous AMAs over the first couple of months in order to make sure everybody has a clear understanding of the program, the requirements, the needs that are being expressed, and we can answer those. And again, all of those are going to be TBD depending on how things start to flow out. Next, please. So big overview. So this is our opportunity to make some big bets in very promising companies and technologies and bridge a lot of the capability gaps and communication gaps that we typically see between our end user community, the people that are the quote unquote tip of the spear, and the people that are responsible for getting them the technology and the capabilities that they ultimately need in order to be effective in doing their jobs. And so we have this program in place to help facilitate some of that. We have this program in place to help bridge the valley of death, as you may have heard the terminology before. And we want to make these bets in small businesses to help bring in the technology and capabilities into the Department of the Air Force. Next, please. So things to consider. These are general guidelines that I don't think are going to change from the 21 to 22 program. And they basically boil down to, you must be able to find somebody in the Air Force that is going to sponsor your technology and help guide you and are expressing that your company is solving a problem for them, that they are going to get behind and champion into a future state. So the key is going to be Department of the Air Force people. We need those people to be the ones that are signing the MOUs, that are guiding and are identified as the technical POCs, and are going to be ultimately responsible for shaping and crafting how this plays out. There's a lot of reasons behind that, but in general, in terms of general guidelines, that would be a good one to hang your hat on. The next one is the matching funds. So we are still going to be doing these matching fund ratios. I anticipate they'll probably stay the same, and unless something drastic happens in the next couple of months, but I would anticipate the ratios are going to be similar. And if you are doing a private raise or something along those lines, you're probably in a good position in order to leverage that against the TACFI or STRATFI program. If you are going to be going for government funding, now is a great time to start talking to your government partners about what is the next step for you and how can they find money in order to put against the capability and support you in these matching components. For my TACFI folks, if you are going to be going for a TACFI, if we need the funds all up front, we are taking these as a one-time bill. They may be multi-year contracts, it may be a 2-year contract, but we want to be able to leverage all of our funds up front and get everything on the contract. So we are asking that all funds that come to the table are ready and available for execution immediately. So that way we can go forth and execute without any additional delays or issues. Next, please. All right, let me open the gates to the questions and answer session of this. So we'll, like I said before, please raise your hand and we will give you a call. I'll call on you and we'll get you unmuted so that you can come online and we can start to do.
Hey, Vanessa, do you want to ask the questions for Greg on that?
Sure. So we'll do a mix, Greg, if you don't mind. We'll answer a few in the Q&A. Melissa, I'm going to ask you to help me here. And then we'll answer a question and then we'll go to a raised hand if there is one. And if you look in at the bottom of your screen, you'll see raise hand and our team will go off of that.
Okay.
So we have a question from Drew White. For purposes of government funding for the match, let's assume a company has a phase 3 contract with a government customer for $10 million. All the funds may not be paid out during the 12-month window. Does the entire $10 million count toward the match or just the amount of funds our company actually receives during the 12-month window?
Yeah, great question. So there are going to be some nuances. For those that have participated in the 21 or are familiar with the notice of opportunity and the requirements therein, you just like this question indicated, there was a 12-month window of opportunity for phase 3 funding to be leveraged and put against as the matching funds. We are going to be changing some of that up into 22 due to some issues that we encounter with the SBA. And so what I would say to that question in particular is, if you are currently executing on a phase 3, what we are going to be looking for in the next year's program, and in all likelihood, is new money coming in to be leveraged and supported because the STRATFI or TACFI is being put in place. So that being said, if part of the strategy of the organization you're currently working with is to take their phase 3 money and put it onto that contract in order to support the effort that is being accomplished by the TACFI or STRATFI, that is going to be something we'd be interested in seeing and leveraging. Now, so the reason I'm not answering your question more directly is because we don't know what form that's going to take in terms of how far in advance are we going to be able to allow that to go. For example, you just mentioned the 12-month window. We don't know how far in advance we're going to be able to let that ride and still be in sync with the SBA. So that is an item that is absolutely going to change this next go around. So I know that's not quite the answer you're looking for, but hopefully that was sufficient.
Great, thank you. We have Blaine Schertz, who has his hand raised. Sir, you can unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, just a quick question here. Can a TACFI award winner here in this year be eligible for a STRATFI in the following year? And it relates specifically to the phase 2B and the STRAT-B being a follow-on to that.
So based on the rules from this year, the answer would be yes. If you were awarded a TACFI and it was a 2B, which is a modification to the original, then you would be eligible to participate in next year's program because it was not a sequential phase 2. That was how your TACFI was awarded. So the short answer is yes. You would be able to participate and apply for a STRATFI in the next year.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. Next.
Okay, let's see. Will Space Force have a counterpart, AFWERX and SpaceWorks?
Yeah, great question. So right now, we are going to be running both sides. So all capabilities will be coming for a supplemental funding program. All capabilities will be running through this program. So we'll be taking space capabilities, we'll be taking air capabilities, whatever the capability is that wants additional supplemental funding, it is going to be run through us. We have SpaceWorks partners that are on this team and are contributing directly.
Thank you, Greg. I learned something new today. We have Mike Jones. Mike, you can unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, in terms of evaluation for the FY22 program, and I realize STRATFI and TACFI might be different based on their response here, but is it more advantageous to have it submitted early on in the offering period, or it does not matter one way or another? How does that work for evaluation and probability of win?
Yeah, so another good question. So with this year's program, this FY21 program, we ran it as a first complete and valid package to first out to a decision. Okay, so the direct answer is yes, it is more advantageous to be an early mover due to the limitations of funds. That being said, if you submit a crap package, then it's not going to move forward. And so it doesn't do you any good to just get something in the door, just to get something in the door. So having all of those wickets and all those players in line and in sync, et cetera, is advantageous, is the most advantageous thing you can do. Of course, if you wait till the last day, that is not as helpful.
Understood. Thanks. And if I can ask just a follow-up question on that, one of the key things that we encountered in the FY21 offering is getting the functional POCs on board, finance and contracting, and a big part of that is us as the companies educating them and getting their buy-in. Is there anything that we can share with them beyond just this slide? Because I think they have a lot of questions on their end about what that looks like, and it can be difficult to get that done quickly. They want to see it materialize before they actually say yes or no.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of things that I think we can readily share. The intent of this year of moving into the FY22 program is to do a very massive education campaign inside of the Air Force. So Jimmy and his team are going to be key players in that, and we need the ability and want to educate the contracting community, the program management community, FM community, et cetera, of what this program is, what it can do, how to leverage it, what their authority and responsibilities would look like if they see a capability package come their way with a request to support, right? So we are taking that on as a program office to do some of that, do that education. Now, in terms of what the company can do, it'll be reinforcing what we're telling you here, as well as once that notice of opportunity goes out the door, having the ability to show them like what it is, what they're signing up for, what their responsibilities are going to be. And we look to be able to provide all of that to you directly.
Roger that. Thank you.
Great. Can you submit STRATFI with the base secured funding and option anticipated funding? This is a question from John.
John, yeah. So the answer is yes. But what we are looking for is no kidding identification of numbers and people. So if you say, all right, my base year is going to be $2 million or $1 million, and it's coming from this organization, well, the next 3 fiscal years need to have an organization and a dollar value that is going to be to meet those ratio numbers that we need. And so this is the point of clarification I want to make as well is, for STRATFI in particular, while we say $3 million is the minimum investment that we need for SBIR, that means that $3 million can be spread over a multi-year period. So it doesn't all have to be base year one is $3 million of SBIR investment, which means it's $6 million of government if it's a defense only track, or et cetera, right? So I just want to make that clear as well.
Greg, can you also address the importance of choosing one or the other, whether it's dual use or defense only? We've gotten a couple questions in asking to combine the two.
Combine the ratios or what? Can you identify a person that may be able to come up and talk to it? Or are they all anonymous?
Yeah, I answered them, they're anonymous. So I've answered 2 of them asking if they can combine a dual use match and a defense only match.
For TACFI or STRATFI?
It was very general, so.
Okay. So I'd say, so in general, the answer is no, right? Like you need to pick a track and go that route. So whatever is going to be more advantageous for you and your company or for the government, if they're going to get a say in how you fund this, then go that way.
Thanks, Melissa. We have Kunal. Your hand is raised. You may unmute and ask your question. Kunal, you can unmute and ask your question.
Hi, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Oh, no worries.
We have a phase 1 that we completed with AFWERX. We submitted our phase 2. We're waiting to hear back on that for the proposal. But in the meanwhile, we already have an ongoing phase 3 with the Navy to transition this technology that they're funding through an EMD effort. So in order to qualify for TACFI or STRATFI, would they literally need to redo their contract through the Air Force to be the government match? Or is there an exception that can be made since we're already on contract with the scope?
Yep. So the first gate you're going to need to meet is you need to be a Department of the Air Force phase 2. So assuming that your phase 2 capability gets selected and funded and all that good stuff, 90 days post that is when you can submit your capability package. If that is successful or once you're putting that package together, the question that you're asking is, can I leverage the Navy's funding that is currently going into a phase 3 for this capability package? Is that correct?
Yes.
So the answer is no. They don't have to rework their contract or anything else. But what they need to be able to do is say, I am willing and able to put my Navy, and I'm assuming it's not CBIR since you said it was phase 3, my Navy government dollars against this capability in order to obtain the matching. Now, the problem that you're going to run into is you need to be able to identify a Air Force customer, organization, and contracting support and end user, which presumably you've done with your phase 2 that you're currently applying with, in order to be able to leverage and execute the STRATFI or TACFI that you'd be going for.
Yeah, and to be clear, I do have a phase two. I do have an Air Force end user for the phase two,
Perfect.
but in order for the Navy funding to qualify for the TACFI, STRATFI, what they would have to MIPR it to the Air Force to put on contract? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right. Yep. So when you put together your capability package, what we'd be looking for is the identification that it's, Navy O&M money or RDT&E money, and they are willing and able to MIPR that over to support this contract.
Okay. Would they be able to play a direct role in managing the execution of their funds, or would the Air Force, PM, the Air Force end user that we're working with, have to be the PM for the program?
The Air Force end user would be the PM for the program, but that doesn't mean that the Navy can't collaborate with that program office or that PM in order to achieve their goals, right? I'd assume that as you're structuring your milestones and as you're having these conversations, you would bring those two organizations together in order to come up with something that'd be advantageous for both in order to leverage that Navy funding.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Great.
Hey,
So,
hey,
go ahead.
Vanessa,
Yes.
this is Gary. Hey, Greg, I want to just take a moment to kind of clarify something, just in case by looking at some of the Q&A that we're getting.
Sure.
When someone asks the question about dual use and defense only, the only option where you're going to have matching from both is the STRATFI dual use option, which is the 1:1 to 2 ratio. We want to make sure that's clear because we get those kind of questions. And that is where the government and the private industry will be matching. So that's the only option you have to bring in both matching government funds and also private industry funds, but it's still called the dual use option. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit. I know, Greg, you went over that in the presentation, but I wanted to make sure that was clear.
Great. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gary. All right, so we have a question. Are joint commands like SOCOM considered Air Force for the purpose of customer end user for the MOU, the customer agreement, and funding?
Yep. So we've had a few packages in this year that have come through from organizations like that. And so when you start to talk about these joint organizations, we still need to be able to tie it back to Air Force needs and requirements. So inside of Special Operations Command, there's an Air Force, so AFSOC, right? So they're the Air Force component of Special Operations. So they need to be the ones that are sponsoring and directing how this plays out in support of these activities. That does not mean that the program office that for the sake of argument, we'll say it's a STRATFI, the program office that is going to be supporting it can't come from one of the other organizations. So for example, PEO Soft Warrior is a joint organization, and they are able to help sponsor and direct that. But what we would be looking for is Air Force representation on both sides. So Air Force organization on the end user side that help direct the way this moves, Air Force representation and direction on the customer side as well, in order to ensure that we are meeting Air Force needs and we're using Air Force dollars to meet those needs.
Thanks, Greg. Okay, we have Thomas Humans. You can unmute and ask your question.
Awesome. Thank you very much, and appreciate getting the chance to ask questions and hear all this information. So if we received a phase 1 in the spring, but we're not able to find the right customer to get that MOU completed, do you think that we'll be able to do a direct phase 2 using that prior phase 1 award in the early 2022 call?
That's a little bit out of my swim lane, but from what I understand, the direct to phase 2 is an independent application. There would be no direct tie to your phase 1.
Okay. Would that phase 1 award enable us to apply to a phase 2 in the standard fashion in the 2022 call?
So there should have been a if you're going to be up if you are eligible to go to phase 2, you should receive a notice to do so and a pathway to submit that capability.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Yes, and I don't know if Jimmy wants to add anything, but from the phase 1 to phase 2 transition is we call that a closed solicitation. So if you're in a phase 1, you have a RFP, the instructions specifically to submit that proposal. And then when the pre-release for 22.1 drops, I would definitely follow the solicitation information closely, and it'll give you all the details. Jimmy, do you want to add anything?
I think you guys covered that pretty well. I would say, definitely show if there's any changes though to what your phase 1 was, if you're going into another solicitation window, if it wasn't picked up. So that's always good to show what new things that you have accomplished in that task. So
That makes sense. Thank you. Appreciate the information.
All right. So, Greg, following the statement, funds must be available by the time of award for TACFI or any time during the STRATFI, unquote. If the investment occurred in 2021, does this qualify?
I am assuming you mean private investment, or are you talking about like phase $3 or something along those lines?
I'm not sure. The submitter is anonymous. So if you would like to offer any more information, whoever typed in that question, let us know and we will follow up. So let's see, what is the best source of STRATFI program information to share with private investors? That's a good one.
Can you say that one more time, please, Vanessa?
What is the best source of STRATFI program information to share with private investors?
I don't have a good answer to that. And so if you're going to ask questions to the government or to the team, we have a email box that you're more than, we offer that type of response. Right now, we're very delayed due to the review of the capability packages. But if you are going to talk about what STRATFI and TACFI is to an investor or to an investor group, AFWERX.af.mil has a page on about this program, and it has things like what the ratios are, what the min-max limits are, things along those lines. So if you go to AFWERX.af.mil and you look for SFPP, a lot of our information is there for public consumption. So that would be a good source of details in which to talk to your investors about the program.
I think also, Greg, right, just generally to the investors, I think some of the things that they can show are some of the things you've already showed, which is, the leveraging of these dollars, how it can help expand whatever that opportunity is, and the fact that this is non-dilutive funding too. Is that correct?
That is correct. So the funding that comes from SBIR is non-diluted. So we are not taking a stake in the company or anything like that. It is our investment in you to deliver capability to the U.S. to the Department of the Air Force.
Greg, I just dropped a link to basically the little flash page that we include in our response. So people can take that and look at that. That's a good talking point and kind of sums up the entire program on a one page.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa.
Great. We have Jeffrey Wagner. If you would like to unmute, you can ask your question.
Yes, thanks for taking my question. Greg, if our company has 2 Air Force technologies and we've been fortunate to get phase 2s for both of these, and they both have phase 3 money, I guess the first question is, can we submit 2 applications to be evaluated independently? And then after you answer that, I have another question for you.
So we did allow that for the FY21 program. There needed to be 90 days between submissions though. So we put in a buffer so that one company couldn't just throw five capability packages into the bucket all at once, right? So we built in a little bit of a spacing tool in order to help spread the money and the capabilities around. I don't know if that will change for this scope for the FY22 program, but again, the short answer based on 21 was yes, you could submit capability packages for both.
Okay, and I'm assuming that it doesn't matter if one is TACFI, one is STRATFI, they're both taken as an application from the same company. They need to be spaced apart 90 days. So that makes sense to me. And then in the evaluation, is it a stronger application if the phase 3 dollars are Air Force dollars? Is that taken more seriously than if they were Navy dollars or MDA dollars?
So no, the source of funds does not drive the decision. The fact that you have a phase 3 is great. Again, I want to revisit some of the talking points about what is going to be eligible for matching, and those very specific details will come out with the notice of opportunity for the next program. But I want to just put it in your ear that the easiest path forward is unobligated funds from the government being submitted to these capabilities. So for example, if that organization has phase 3 dollars that they have coming in and they intend to submit it to that phase 3, if they wanted to hold off on that obligation in order to apply it for this, that makes it a lot easier to take those into consideration and justify that to the SBA. That being said, if the program office makes the decision that no, we need to execute these dollars and they need to go on to the phase 3 now, et cetera, those are things that we can take into consideration, but the details about how we will do that will come out in the notice of opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
Great. We have a question from John. Can you clarify strategic matching, i.e. funding that is already on contract with another service and being executed? Can the funding be matched without terminating the contract and redirecting the funds?
Yeah, so John, it's going to be the same answer that I just gave to Jeff. So when we talk about phase 3 or government funding that would be coming in and being used for matching, the easiest path forward is unobligated funds. If it is on a phase 3, we are going to be putting out some stipulations around that to determine whether it's going to be eligible for matching or not.
Thanks. Mike Jones, you can unmute and ask your question.
Yeah. Can you clarify what dictates when a sequential phase 2 is appropriate versus just extending a phase 2 contract? Is it always TACFI is just an extension of the phase 2? Is it sometimes a sequential phase 2? It just seems to be a little bit unclear. Yep.
So let me clarify that then. When we talk about what is the contracting strategy to do these TACFI or STRATFIs, one of the main things that we're going to be looking at with the office is the phase 2 still active or not? If it is still active, then they have the opportunity to decide whether or not they want to do a modification to that contract and add dollars and scope to that in order to move forward with the TACFI or STRATFI. Or if it is not open, then you have to do a sequential. Like if it's passed, if you've had your last deliverable, the contract is closed, then you must do a sequential phase 2 in order to execute the STRATFI or TACFI.
Understood. So yeah, if there is time still remaining or funding on a contract, is it safe to assume that the preferred method would be just to modify that instead of starting a whole new contract?
It really depends on the Air Force organizations. Some absolutely would prefer just to modify the contract and move forward. Some, depending on what the terms and conditions of the contract look like beforehand, may want to redo that in order to better suit their acquisition strategy.
Understood. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Great. So we have Anonymous. We were just recently awarded a phase 2 in August and received investor funding in support of the project that will close at the end of September. Will all the funds raised in the round be eligible for matching, or just what was raised after the phase 2 contract was awarded?
So it is funds that were raised after the phase 2 award. Now, that being said, if you didn't finish your funding round until after the phase 2, then that is an area where we can explore and make sure that all the funds would be eligible. But generally, we go off of the closing date of your funding round.
Okay, and just to follow up, there's a second question, I believe that's similar. If the private funds were invested before the award of a P2, are they eligible for matching in the TACFI program?
No. So we're looking for funding that is coming in post phase 2. And ideally, we'd love to be able to hear from your investors that, hey, we're putting this forward in order to support the TACFI or STRATFI initiative. To us, that's like the golden stamp, right? Like that is phenomenal, and we really love to see that. But in general, we are looking for funding that has been raised after your phase 2 award.
Thank you. So a question from Margaret: what color or type of funding, type of unobligated funds can be used for matching? So
the general answer is any. However, I always caveat that with we cannot break fiscal law. So for work that is being described inside of the milestones and the capability package that you submit, there needs to be alignment to the money that is being put against it. So for example, every single capability package that gets submitted to us needs to be able to have RDT&E work described in that package. Otherwise, we point blank cannot fund that. And we've had a couple of packages that are falling into that category. They're doing just straight services, or they're doing something else that is not RDT&E work. Now, if you were bringing in O&M or Milcon or something like that, that type of work needs to be outlined in the capability package with the identification of how that funding is going to be applied. And we also would like to hear from the customer organization and the contracting shop as to what their contract and acquisition strategy is going to look like in order to accommodate those types of funds.
Thank you, Greg. And don't forget, for the attendees online, if you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. You go to the bottom of your screen and you will see the icon and raise hand. We have a question: are DoD agencies allowed to co-fund either of these types of projects? For example, DOE, NASA.
So we accept any government source of funds for matching. Again, it just needs to match and be in line with the work described so that we don't break fiscal law. And that goes down to state and local too.
Can Air Force non-SBIR funds applied to a TACFI that was not used for matching under the TACFI be used as strategic matching for follow-on STRATFIs?
All right, I'm assuming you read that one. I think I need to.
I did. It's by John. So if you, towards the end.
Yep, got it. Can Air Force non-SBIR funds be applied? Okay. So John, I think the problem that you're going to run into is that the funds that would have gone to one of the contracts, if it's like leftover dollars, are going to get swept up and taken somewhere else. So I would be highly suspicious of funding that kind of languished for long enough where two rounds of this program could make it through.
Right. So we have a question. Can TACFI funding be used towards expenses in attaining an ATO? That's the authority to operate. So considering our what we do That's a great question.
Yeah, so this is a bit of a tricky question. So we still need to have the alignment of the funding source to the work to be performed. And we have sponsored milestones that involved getting onto platform 1 in order to obtain a continuous ATO, et cetera, right? So the short answer is yes, there is a possibility of utilizing this program in order to do that. But I'll caveat that with the funds need to be able to make that happen. The type of funds need to be able to make that happen.
Great. If we will be combining multiple government sources for the defense-only funding matching in either TACFI or STRATFI, do we need a customer memorandum from each?
No. So we are looking for, you can bring in 30 different sources of government funding. Now, that being said, it is going to be very difficult for you to wrangle 30 different sources of government funding and actually get them to send all the money over in the timeframes that you're looking for, et cetera, et cetera. When we look at the customer memorandum, what we would be looking for is a very deliberate ability to move and support these packages from a source. So all of the milestones will be outlined and agreed upon. All of the supporting functions are going to be identified and concur that they're going to be doing the work. And it has alignment to the end user, the Air Force end user. So we want to make sure that those things are in sync. If you want to identify those other organizations as other interested parties in the memorandum, that is totally acceptable. And frankly, that's something we'd be interested in seeing. But you don't have to have separate memorandums for each one of those entities. And you shouldn't. You should not have separate memorandums for each of those entities.
Greg, does the program accept letters of support at all?
So we did accept letters of support. In this next program, we are, I don't know how that's going to play out exactly, but those are not strictly necessary, and in fact can slow up the submission of a capability package drastically. So if you're going to make the trade-off to getting a letter of support to versus just submitting the package as is with all the appropriate signatories, the decision will ultimately be yours. But I would be very conscious of how you make that trade-off. And once we have the notes of opportunity out and the details out for 22, adhere to those and you shouldn't go wrong.
Thank you. We have a question. Are TACFI and STRATFI limited to only prime contractors on Department of the Air Force SBIRs, or can subcontractors on phase 2s submit by themselves?
So this is open to any and all Department of the Air Force phase 2s. Your relation to a prime or not to a prime is irrelevant to us. Now, what is relevant to us is what the transition strategy looks like. So if, for example, you are a company that is going to have this phase 2, this TACFI or STRATFI, and part of the transition strategy is to move and get you a subcontract to a prime, that's of interest to us. We love to know that acquisition and that transition strategy. But just because you have this association already does not limit you from applying one way or the other.
Thank you, Greg. If you want to take a look at the Q&A, I'm going to read off the top question. It's just kind of lengthy. Prior to a phase 3, a company is typically working with the projected DoD customer to help them find the funds needed. How might companies help the DoD customer find the funds required to match? Short timeline of a phase 2 makes it difficult for DoD orgs to pamper and receive funds in time for follow-on STRATFI, TACFI.
Yeah, fantastic question. So the first part of that, I would advocate that if you're already looking for phase 3 funding, leverage that phase 3 funding and apply it to the STRATFI and TACFI. It's an opportunity for the program office to bring in additional funds in order to support their endeavors. So that'd be the first thing I would tell them. The second thing is, how do we go and find the funds? So there are numerous ways in which this could happen. However, if you're talking about maybe some of the more the larger program offices or something like that, if they have modernization funding that you and your technology can align to, that's a great way to be able to start to accelerate and get into their acquisition strategy, so that, let's say, for the sake of argument, they had $1 million. It was in the modernization fund for some effort. They could apply that to the TACFI that would be going forward for this capability in this company, assuming they had the phase 2. And that would buy them 2-ish years to make sure that the capability is integrated into the acquisition strategy, that makes it into the POM cycle. Maybe they do a break-in or whatever the case may be, and that it can continue to have that future support and life cycle associated with it into the future, right? They issue a phase 3 and you're off to the races because you have the POM funding that's aligned, and you also have the phase 3 contract that allows them to continuously leverage your capability moving forward. Now, there are other opportunity spaces out there. Maybe you're leveraging SIF funding, maybe you're leveraging some fallout funding, UFERS, whatever the case may be, in order to do that. UFERS, I would shy away from, because the funding is not going to be available by the time you submit your capability package. But if you are in a STRATFI or other, and you're in execution, that may be a way to fund some of the options that you're putting forward. So I hope that kind of answered most of your question there.
Great. Greg, thank you for all the information. As we are coming up on the hour, I'm going to hand it over. So our team answered just about over 70 questions. We appreciate everybody who came on live. I'm going to hand it over to Jimmy for closing remarks, unless you have something you would like to add, Greg, before we hand it over.
I have nothing else other than please stay tuned, and we look forward to all the participation by eligible companies in the next round.
Great.
I really appreciate that, Greg. Awesome content as always. Greg had mentioned too, in one of the things about RDT&E. If you guys remember, we had 2 weeks ago a discussion here on RDT&E. So this is kind of a good plug-in to let you guys know that we take all these videos, including Greg's today, and we're going to put them on that Air Force Cyber Sitter website. So I don't know if we can get a link into our chat for that.
I gotcha. It's there,
perfect.
Jimmy.
We really appreciate that. And then plugging the next 2 weeks, we got next Thursday, it's going to be STTR. And then followed at the end of the month, we're going to do an intro to AFVentures. So I just want to thank everyone again for coming out. Great questions. Greg, amazing job as always. And if you have any questions or concerns, just feel free to email us and we'll be happy to help. Thanks again for your time.